Loneliness is an existential reality that people often avoid confronting. It is a fundamental part of human existence, something that follows each of us like a shadow. You can distract yourself from it. You can try to push it away with work, entertainment, or social interactions. But in the quiet moments, in the middle of the night, when all the distractions fade, loneliness emerges again, demanding attention. A woman who sleeps alone with no husband may feel this loneliness more acutely than others because she is keenly aware of what is missing. She has been told by family, by friends, by society at large, that she was meant to have a companion, that she should be sharing her life with someone, that her bed should not be empty. And in that absence, she may feel unanchored, uncertain, and at times deeply alone. But here is the reality. Loneliness is not the absence of people. It is the absence of meaning. You can be surrounded by a crowd and still feel like a stranger among them. You can be married and still feel profoundly alone if that relationship lacks depth, if it lacks honesty, if it lacks the fundamental foundation of shared values and trust. So the first question to ask is not why you are alone, but rather, what does this solitude mean? What is it teaching you? Because it is in these moments when you are left with nothing but your own thoughts that the most profound self-discovery takes place. When you are not filling the silence with another person's presence, you are forced to confront yourself, and that can be terrifying. It can feel like looking into a mirror that reflects back every insecurity, every regret, every fear. But that confrontation is necessary. It is through understanding yourself, through truly grasping who you are and what you stand for, that you begin to build a life that is not dependent on another person's validation. Many people seek relationships out of fear. They are afraid of being alone. They are afraid of facing their own inadequacies, of acknowledging their past failures, of realizing that they may not be as strong or as whole as they pretend to be. And so they rush into companionship, not because they are ready, but because they are desperate to escape solitude. But this is a mistake. A relationship formed on the foundation of fear will always be unstable. It will demand from the other person a level of emotional support that they can never fully provide. It will place pressure on them to be the answer to your loneliness, and that is a burden no one should have to bear. A woman who sleeps alone has an opportunity, though it may not feel like one, to develop an inner strength that many never attain. She has the chance to understand herself deeply, to clarify her values, to cultivate resilience. She has the space to grow into a person who does not need a relationship to feel whole, but rather who can bring wholeness into a relationship when the time comes. But this does not mean denying the reality of loneliness. It does not mean pretending that solitude is always enjoyable, that there are no nights of longing, no moments of sadness. Those feelings are real and they should be acknowledged, but they should not be seen as permanent. Loneliness is a season, and seasons change. It is a part of the journey, not the destination. The mistake is in assuming that it will last forever, that being alone now means being alone always. That is the kind of thinking that leads to despair, and despair is the enemy of growth. The truth is, you are not truly alone. Even in your solitude, there is something greater than yourself, a guiding force, a deeper purpose, a path that is unfolding even when you cannot yet see where it leads. If you were to shift your focus from what is missing to what is possible, from what you lack to what you can build, you would begin to see that this season of solitude is not a punishment but a preparation. It is shaping you into someone who will not settle for less than what she deserves, who will not enter a relationship out of fear, but rather out of the certainty that she is choosing someone who aligns with her values and her purpose. It is in solitude that the greatest work is done. It is in solitude that artists create, that philosophers think, that leaders develop the clarity to lead. And it is in solitude that you have the chance to become the person you were meant to be. Do not waste this time longing for something that is not yet here. Use it, build yourself into the kind of woman who, whether she sleeps alone or not, knows her worth, stands firm in her convictions, and never allows loneliness to dictate the course of her life. Because the truth is this: if you cannot find meaning in solitude, you will not find it in companionship either. But if you can learn to stand strong on your own, to face your own fears, to build a life of purpose, then whether you remain single or eventually find a partner, you will never be truly alone. Society has a way of constructing narratives about what a person's life should look like. These narratives are often implicit, deeply ingrained in culture, and difficult to challenge without encountering resistance, both from others and from within oneself. One of the most persistent of these narratives is that a woman's worth is tied to her relationship status, that she is, in some fundamental sense, incomplete without a husband, that her value is, at least in part, determined by whether she is chosen, desired, pursued, and if she finds herself alone, whether by circumstance or by choice, she may begin to wonder if she has failed in some way, if she is somehow deficient, if there is something lacking in her that has led to this outcome. But that way of thinking is not only outdated, it is also deeply untrue. It reduces a woman's worth to a single variable, her marital status, when in reality her value is derived from something far greater. The measure of a person is not found in whether they have been chosen by another, but in who they are, in how they conduct themselves, in the strength of their character, in the way they contribute to the world. To believe that a woman's value is contingent upon marriage is to misunderstand the very nature of human worth. It is to assume that a person is only significant in relation to another, rather than recognizing that significance comes from within. This kind of thinking is not only harmful, but it is also deeply limiting. It tells a woman that she should measure her success not by the life she builds, the knowledge she gains, the people she helps, the purpose she pursues, but by whether she is deemed worthy of companionship. And when that companionship is absent, she may begin to believe that she is failing at something essential. But here's the reality. A woman who sleeps alone is not incomplete. She is not lacking in value. She is not defined by what she does or does not have in her personal life. She is an individual, whole and complete in herself, with a purpose that extends far beyond the narrow confines of relationship status. And if she were to fully internalize that truth, if she were to recognize that she does not need external validation to affirm her worth, she would become unstoppable. She would free herself from the weight of expectation, from the silent judgment that suggests she must follow a predetermined path, from the fear that she is somehow behind, missing out, falling short. But this is not an easy thing to do, because the voices of society are loud and they are persistent. They whisper through family expectations, through social conventions, through the subtle comparisons that arise when friends marry, when relationships form, when others seem to be progressing in ways that she is not. They tell her again and again that she must catch up, that she must change something, that she must seek what is missing. And if she listens too closely, she may begin to believe that they are right. But they are not right. A woman's worth is not something that can be given or taken away by others. It is not determined by whether or not she has a partner. It is inherent. It is undeniable. And when she stands in that truth, when she builds a life that is meaningful on its own terms, when she pursues growth and knowledge and strength for the sake of her own becoming, she becomes something rare. A person who is fully themselves, independent of external affirmation. And ironically, it is precisely this kind of woman who is the most capable of forming deep and meaningful relationships, because she does not seek them out of desperation, out of the need to be completed, but out of genuine connection, mutual respect, shared vision. A person who knows their own worth does not settle for less than they deserve. They do not remain in relationships that diminish them. They do not seek validation through attachment. They choose their path with clarity, with intention, with the knowledge that they are enough on their own. This is a different way of approaching life, and it requires strength. It requires the willingness to reject false narratives, to challenge deeply held assumptions, To stand firm in the knowledge that one's value does not come from external circumstance. It requires the ability to be alone without feeling lonely, to build a life that is fulfilling in its own right, to recognize that companionship is a gift, not a requirement for a meaningful existence. And this is the kind of strength that transforms everything. Because when a woman understands her worth, truly understands it, she is no longer controlled by fear. She does not rush into relationships that do not serve her. She does not feel diminished by her singleness. She does not live according to the expectations of others. She builds her own path. She becomes who she was meant to be. And in doing so, she proves that worth is not something that is given. It is something that simply is. A woman who sleeps alone is not defined by what is absent. She is defined by who she is, and that is enough. Life unfolds in seasons, and each season has its own demands, its own trials, its own opportunities. There are times of companionship, of deep connection, of shared burdens and mutual growth. And then there are times of solitude, times when a person finds themselves walking alone, perhaps for the first time, perhaps after years of expectation or disappointment. These moments, though they may feel heavy, are not devoid of meaning. They are not wasted. In fact, they may be among the most important periods of transformation in a person's life. A woman who sleeps alone without a husband is in such a season. And the way she interprets this time will determine its impact. If she sees it as a curse, as an indictment of her worth, as a sign that she has somehow failed to meet society's expectations, then she will suffer more than necessary. She will carry a weight that is not hers to bear. She will allow external pressures to shape her internal state, to convince her that she is not enough on her own. But what if this season of solitude was not a punishment, but a preparation? What if instead of being something to endure, it was something to embrace? What if it was a time to become stronger, wiser, more resilient, to develop the kind of character that is not easily swayed by external circumstances, the kind of depth that is only cultivated through introspection and personal challenge? Because the reality is this: a person who does not first learn to be alone will never truly learn how to be with another. If a woman enters a relationship without understanding herself, without having explored her strengths and weaknesses, without knowing what she truly values, without developing a sense of purpose that extends beyond companionship, then she risks losing herself in that relationship. She risks defining her worth by someone else's presence. And that is a dangerous place to be. Many people, in their desire to avoid loneliness, rush into relationships that are not right for them. They mistake desperation for love, attachment for connection, external validation for genuine intimacy. And in doing so, they set themselves up for pain. Because when a relationship is built on the need to escape loneliness, rather than on shared purpose and mutual growth, it is weak at its foundation. It will crack under the weight of unspoken expectations, of resentment, of the realization that the void one hoped to fill remains unfilled. This is why solitude matters. It is in solitude that a person discovers who they truly are. It is in solitude that they confront their fears, their doubts, their deepest insecurities. And it is in confronting those things, rather than running from them, that real transformation takes place. A woman who is alone has the opportunity to ask herself the hard questions. What kind of life do I want to build? What kind of person do I want to be? What values will I stand for regardless of who is beside me? These are not questions that can be answered by the presence of a partner. They must be answered first before love can truly flourish. But this does not mean pretending that solitude is always easy. It is not. There will be nights of longing, moments of doubt, days when the weight of being alone feels unbearable. These emotions should not be dismissed, nor should they be exaggerated into despair. They are simply part of the human experience, signals that point to deeper needs that should not be ignored, but also should not be used as justification for settling for something less than what is right. A person who learns to find meaning in solitude becomes powerful in a way that many never do. Because once they understand that their worth is not dependent on another, they become free to choose relationships from a place of strength rather than weakness, free to build a life that is fulfilling on its own terms, free to walk forward with confidence, knowing that companionship, when it comes, will be an addition, not a necessity. A woman who sleeps alone is not defined by what she lacks. She is defined by what she builds in this time, by the way she chooses to shape her own story. If she sees this season as an opportunity rather than a burden, then she will emerge from it stronger, more capable, more sure of herself than ever before. And when the time comes, if it comes, to share her life with another, she will do so as a whole person, not as someone who is waiting to be completed. Because a person's worth is not given to them by another. It is something they carry within them, whether they walk alone or beside another. And when that truth is understood, truly understood, there is no fear in solitude. There is only the recognition that this too is part of the journey, and that every step forward is one that leads towards something meaningful. There is a profound difference between solitude and loneliness, though many fail to distinguish between the two. Loneliness is a state of suffering, an ache that comes from the perception of being disconnected, unwanted, or forgotten. Solitude, on the other hand, is a state of being alone, but not necessarily in distress. It is the space in which a person can truly come to know themselves, to refine their character, and to gain clarity about what is truly meaningful. For a woman who sleeps alone without a husband, the way she interprets her solitude is crucial. If she sees it as evidence of failure, as proof that something is wrong with her, or that she has been abandoned by fate, she will suffer more than necessary. She will carry the weight of shame, comparing herself to others who appear to have what she does not. She will internalize the idea that something essential is missing from her life, and in doing so, she will undermine her own strength. But what if solitude was not a punishment? What if, instead of being something to escape, it was something to embrace? There is a reason that throughout history, those who have sought wisdom, philosophers, poets, spiritual leaders, have all understood the necessity of solitude. They recognized that in order to truly develop, one must spend time in silence, away from the noise of external validation, disconnected from the expectations of others. Because here's the truth, when a person is alone, they are forced to confront themselves. There are no distractions, no relationships to define them, no external structures to prop up their sense of identity. In this space, they must ask themselves the hard questions. Who am I really? What do I believe? What do I stand for? These are not questions that can be answered by the presence of another person. They must be confronted in solitude. Many people avoid solitude precisely because they fear these questions. They fill their lives with distractions, constant socialization, fleeting relationships, external validation, because they are terrified of what they might discover if they were truly alone with their thoughts. But the person who is willing to face themselves in solitude gains something rare: self-acknowledge. And self-acknowledge is the foundation of strength. A woman who learns to be alone without resentment, without bitterness, without desperation, is a woman who cannot be manipulated. She does not enter relationships from a place of need, but from a place of choice. She does not accept treatment that is beneath her dignity. She does not seek a partner merely to escape herself, but because she has built herself into someone capable of giving and receiving love in a way that is meaningful. There is a profound difference between solitude and loneliness, though many fail to distinguish between the two. Loneliness is a state of suffering, an ache that comes from the perception of being disconnected, unwanted, or forgotten. Solitude, on the other hand, is a state of being alone, but not necessarily in distress. It is the space in which a person can truly come to know themselves, to refine their character, and to gain clarity about what is truly meaningful. For a woman who sleeps alone without a husband, the way she interprets her solitude is crucial. If she sees it as evidence of failure, as proof that something is wrong with her or that she has been abandoned by fate, she will suffer more than necessary. She will carry the weight of shame, comparing herself to others who appear to have what she does not. She will internalize the idea that something essential is missing from her life, and in doing so, she will undermine her own strength. But what if solitude was not a punishment? What if, instead of being something to escape, it was something to embrace? There is a reason that throughout history, those who have sought wisdom, philosophers, poets, spiritual leaders, have all understood the necessity of solitude. They recognize that in order to truly develop, one must spend time in silence, away from the noise of external validation, disconnected from the expectations of others. Because here's the truth, when a person is alone, they are forced to confront themselves. There are no distractions, no relationships to define them, no external structure prop up their sense of identity. In this space, they must ask themselves the hard questions. Who am I really? What do I believe? What do I stand for? These are not questions that can be answered by the presence of another person. They must be confronted in solitude. Many people avoid solitude precisely because they fear these questions. They fill their lives with distractions, constant socialization, fleeting relationships, external validation, because they are terrified of what they might discover if they were truly alone with their thoughts. But the person who is willing to face themselves in solitude gains something rare, self-knowledge. And self-knowledge is the foundation of strength. A woman who learns to be alone without resentment, without bitterness, without desperation, is a woman who cannot be manipulated. She does not enter relationships from a place of need, but from a place of choice. She does not accept treatment that is beneath her dignity. She does not seek a partner merely to escape herself, but because she has built herself into someone capable of giving and receiving love in a way that is meaningful. And here is the irony. The woman who learns to be alone is often the one most capable of forming deep and lasting connections, because she is not looking for someone to complete her. She is not grasping at relationships as a means of avoiding solitude. She has already done the difficult work of understanding herself, of shaping her own life into something of substance. She has become a person worth knowing, not because she is desperate to be known, but because she has cultivated something within herself that is valuable. But none of this is easy. To live without resentment in solitude requires discipline. It requires a refusal to succumb to bitterness, to avoid the easy trap of self-pity. It requires the ability to look at the world not with the eyes of someone who believes they have been wronged, but with the eyes of someone who sees opportunity even in difficulty. It is easy to say, I am alone, and therefore I am unworthy. It is much harder to say I'm alone, and therefore I have an opportunity to become stronger. But the latter is the path forward. Because every great achievement, every deep transformation, every meaningful life is built on the foundation of difficult but necessary work. And that work is done first and foremost in solitude. So what should a woman who sleeps alone do? She should build. Build herself into someone she admires. Build skills that make her competent, resilient, and capable. Build relationships not from a place of need, but from a place of strength. Build a life that has meaning on its own, whether or not someone else is there to witness it. Because here's the truth that many people never understand. A person who can stand alone is a person who can walk anywhere. And a woman who knows her own worth, who has faced solitude and come out stronger, will never be at the mercy of someone else's validation. She will choose her path. And when she does, she will do so not from fear, but from a place of true and undeniable strength. Life often unfolds in ways we do not anticipate, and sometimes the road we find ourselves walking is not the one we had planned. For many, the expectation is that companionship will come naturally, that love will be a given, that the presence of another will always be there to share in the burdens of life. But reality is often much different. There are seasons of solitude, times when the path must be walked alone, and for some, this can feel like an unbearable weight. Yet solitude, when understood properly, is not merely an absence of companionship, but an opportunity for profound personal growth. A woman who sleeps alone without a husband faces a unique challenge. The world has a way of making her believe that her worth is contingent on her relationship status, that her life is somehow incomplete without the presence of a man beside her. These ideas, deeply ingrained in culture and reinforced by social expectations, can lead to unnecessary suffering. If she believes them, if she internalizes the notion that she is somehow deficient because she is alone, then she will find herself burdened with shame and doubt. And when a person carries that weight, they become vulnerable to making poor decisions, rushing into relationships that do not serve them, accepting treatment that is beneath them, settling for less than what is right. But what if solitude was not a deficiency? What if instead it was a time of preparation? Because here's something that is often overlooked. Solitude, when properly understood, is not about what is missing, it is about what is being built. It is a time to strengthen oneself, to refine one's character, to develop skills, to gain wisdom, and to construct a life that is meaningful on its own. And this is not an easy task. It requires discipline. It requires resilience. And it requires the ability to stand firm in the face of cultural pressure that says a woman's value is dependent on who stands beside her. Because here's the reality: no relationship can save a person from themselves. No amount of external validation can compensate for an internal void. If a person enters a relationship out of desperation, out of fear of being alone, then they are not truly choosing that relationship, they are clinging to it. And when a relationship is built on need rather than strength, it is weak at its foundation. It becomes a structure that cannot hold, one that will inevitably collapse under the weight of unspoken expectations and unresolved insecurities. A woman who learns to be alone learns something invaluable. She learns that her worth is not defined by another person. She learns that she can stand on her own. And when she does, she becomes formidable. Because she is no longer looking for someone to complete her, she is already complete. She is not waiting for a partner to give her life meaning, she has already found meaning. And when a person reaches that state, they no longer settle. They no longer accept relationships that diminish them. They no longer compromise their values just to avoid solitude. This does not mean that loneliness is not real. It is. There will be nights when the silence feels heavy, moments when doubt creeps in, times when it seems easier to surrender to bitterness or self-pity. But suffering is a part of life, and how a person responds to it determines their path. The easy way out: lowering one's standards, filling the void with temporary distractions, seeking validation in the wrong places, leads to more suffering in the long run. The harder path, the path of resilience, of self-reflection, of personal growth, leads to something far greater. Because here is something fundamental: a person who has learned to thrive in solitude is a person who has built something solid within themselves. And that solidity does not go unnoticed. Strength is attractive. Depth is attractive. Competence is attractive. A woman who has built herself into someone strong, intelligent, and self-sufficient is not invisible, she is magnetic. She does not need to chase relationships because the right relationships naturally gravitate toward her. But even beyond that, a person's primary goal should not be to find a partner, it should be to build a meaningful life. Relationships, when they are right, are a beautiful addition to that life, but they are not the foundation. The foundation must be built first in solitude, in discipline, in the careful construction of a life that has value independent of who may or may not be in it. So what does a woman who sleeps alone do? She builds. She sharpens her mind, she strengthens her body, she deepens her spirit. She refuses to let the world tell her that she is incomplete. She learns to enjoy her own company, to find joy in her own pursuits, to cultivate relationships that enrich rather than diminish her. And in doing so, she transforms her solitude into something powerful. And when the right person does come along, if they do, she will be ready. Not because she was waiting, not because she was desperate, but because she spent her time becoming someone who was truly capable of love. And whether or not that moment arrives, she will know deep within herself that she is enough, because she is. A woman who sleeps alone without a husband may be confronted with a difficult reality, one that can be unsettling, one that challenges deeply ingrained societal narratives about fulfillment, companionship, and security. She may find herself wrestling with thoughts of inadequacy, of loneliness, of uncertainty about what the future holds. And yet there is something profoundly important about this experience, something that, if properly understood, can transform the entire trajectory of her life. Because the truth is, solitude is not merely an absence of companionship, it is an opportunity to build something within oneself that cannot be built in any other way. It is a time of refinement, of strengthening, of facing hard truths without distraction. And there is immense power in this process, though it is often painful because it forces a person to confront themselves honestly. It is easy to define oneself in relation to others. Many people do this unconsciously. They see themselves as a daughter, a wife, a mother, A friend is a reflection of the roles they play in the lives of those around them. And while relationships are undeniably meaningful, they can also become a way of avoiding the fundamental question, who am I when no one else is around? A woman who sleeps alone is forced to wrestle with this question. Without a partner to shape her identity, she must construct it for herself. This is not an easy task, but it is a necessary one. Because here's the reality: if you do not know who you are, if you have not deliberately chosen your values, your beliefs, your purpose, then you are at the mercy of external forces. You become vulnerable to manipulation, to chasing relationships for the sake of validation rather than genuine connection. You risk building a life that is not truly yours, but one that has been shaped by the expectations of others. So solitude becomes a test. Can you stand on your own? Can you build a meaningful existence without relying on another person to define it for you? These are crucial questions. And the answer to them determines whether a person is living authentically or merely existing in reaction to external circumstances. Now, this is not to say that relationships are unimportant. On the contrary, meaningful relationships are one of the most valuable aspects of life. But they should not be pursued out of desperation. They should not be sought as a way to escape oneself. A strong relationship is built between two strong individuals, not between two people who are using each other to avoid confronting their own weaknesses. And so a woman who finds herself alone has an opportunity to become someone truly formidable, someone who does not seek validation in fleeting connections, someone who does not settle for less than she deserves, someone who has built a life so meaningful that any relationship she enters is an addition rather than a necessity. But this is difficult. It requires discipline. It requires the ability to endure discomfort, to resist the easy path of self-pity, to reject the idea that worth is tied to relationship status. It requires a deep commitment to self-improvement, to developing skills, to cultivating wisdom, to building resilience. Because here's something undeniable: competence breeds confidence. When a person is competent, when they have developed the ability to navigate the world effectively, they do not see themselves as powerless. They do not see themselves as victims of circumstance. They see themselves as agents of change, as individuals who have control over their own destiny. This shift in perspective is crucial because many people, when faced with solitude, allow it to consume them. They become bitter, resentful. They look at the world and see only injustice. They compare themselves to others and conclude that life has treated them unfairly. But this mindset leads nowhere. It breeds stagnation. It keeps a person trapped in a cycle of negativity, unable to see the possibilities that still exist. The alternative, the harder but more rewarding path, is to take responsibility, to say, I may not have chosen this situation, but I will use it to become stronger, to refuse to see solitude as a punishment and instead see it as preparation. Because that's exactly what it is. If a woman learns to be alone without resentment, without self-doubt, without desperation, then she becomes truly free. Free to choose a partner who truly complements her rather than merely fills a void. Free to walk away from relationships that do not serve her. Free to build a life that is fulfilling on its own terms. And this kind of strength does not go unnoticed. The woman who has built herself into someone of value, who has cultivated intelligence, competence, and self-sufficiency, becomes someone worth knowing. She becomes someone whose presence is not just tolerated but sought after. But even beyond that, she becomes someone who is at peace with herself. Someone who does not fear solitude because she has learned to thrive within it. Someone who understands that fulfillment is not something given by another, it is something built from within. And that is the ultimate goal: to build a life that is meaningful regardless of external circumstances. To become someone so strong, so competent, so full of purpose that whether she walks alone or with a partner, she knows without any doubt that she is enough,